St. Louis Fed is warning that the shutdown can't continue, obviously, indefinitely or forever. James Bullard has written, if it does, deep into the second half, then I think you risk getting into a financial crisis or even a depression scenario. And if you get into that, I think even worse, health outcomes would be way worse. Pat Harker's with me, President of the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia. Good to have you, and thank you, Mr. President, for this. So from the Philly Fed's point of view, obviously you've heard just the discussion then. With your manufacturers' survey from April, which was pretty grim news, you really can't see manufacturing and economic activity picking up in any meaningful sense as long as we have to have this mass social distancing.
So thank you, Richard, for having me on. The Manufacturing Business Outlook survey we recently released, obviously the current activity index was very bad. But the future activity index was not that bad. And it's best exemplified by one of our contacts who's told us that, yes, he's not producing right now, but people aren't canceling orders. They're just delaying the shipment. That's a good sign. Probably manufacturing of all the sectors of the economy is the one that will bounce back the quickest because it's probably the easiest relative to service sector jobs to socially distance.
As the recovery begins, where do you see the balance of responsibility for stimulus or for further accommodation to the economy? Is the balance with the Fed to do more or with the administration for fiscal?
So we acted very quickly and we acted very decisively at the Fed to put in place the tools we need to create the liquidity that we need to keep the economy running. I wouldn't call that a stimulus. This is an attempt to just try to mitigate the problems from this terrible health crisis that we're all facing. As we come out of that, we've committed at the FOMC to keep rates low for long and to gradually raise them once we start to see the economy recovering, and not until then. So, yes, we could expand certain facilities, but we'll also be pulling back on certain facilities over time when they're no longer needed.
Of the facilities that were put in place, the corporate facility that allowed you to buy corporate debt, the municipal facility, all of which lubricated the financial markets, which do you think has proven to be the most useful?
Of course, there are some that are coming, like the Main Street program that we'll be launching, and I want to come back to that. But I think they've all had an impact. We're seeing market functioning starting to come back. Now, the most recent one with respect to municipal bonds is clearly necessary because states and municipalities are struggling.
The Main Street plan, which is coming on stream, is very much the Fed's response, of course, to, if you like, PPP and the way in which the whole thing, if you joined up, if you like, joined up recovery. What to you seems to be the important part of the Main Street plan?
So there are really two parts in my mind. One is what we're launching right now, which is the corporate Main Street program, to try to help mid-sized companies, really filling in the gap between where the PPP helped and then large corporates. That's critical. Those companies are critical to our economy. The next wave that we're starting to think about is one that's near and dear to my heart as a former university president. Eds and Meds nonprofits are also struggling through this. We see that with colleges and universities all across the country. We see this with rural health communities and health systems. So that's one that we're starting to talk to those communities about what would be helpful to them.
Just a couple more issues. The US the Treasury is going to be looking for $3 trillion worth of basically borrowings at the moment. Are you at the stage where you are in any way concerned at the appetite for both domestic and international investors to eat that much debt?
No, I'm not at this point. However, going forward, as we get out of this crisis and get back to some sense of what the new future looks like, we are going to have to put in place fiscal discipline across our economy. No question about that.
And finally, the Philly Fed also, of course, looks after the Treasury checkbook. In a sense, you run the Treasury checkbook. What's it been like? I mean, millions, hundreds of millions of checks have been going out. You've seen a Treasury accounting that has been something extraordinary and sure in terms of numbers of transactions across the swathe of the economy. How difficult has it been to manage it?
I give great credit to our staff all across the Federal Reserve System. They've really risen to the occasion. And I see this every day in our committee work. And I see it out in my neighborhood right now, where I am sitting in my home right now. Neighbors come up and just thank us. One of my neighbors across the street thanked me the other day because he was able to access for his small business the support he needs to keep his employees employed. I mean, that's a good feeling for all of us at the Fed to help and do what we can.
Mr. President, thank you for joining us. Please do let's talk again as this crisis goes into different phases. I appreciate it, sir. Thank you.